Namaskar, my name is Pankaj Dhapodkar. Hello viewers, welcome to all. This is our tele-running session on Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, and I, on behalf of IBBI, along with me, Shri Rahul Khanna, Assistant General Manager. We welcome you all, and today we'll be discussing on how technology will help IBC ecosystem and how it is useful in entire IBC ecosystem. So I'll now take it forward how the roadmap of this presentation will look like. So first we will introduce on how the IBC has been formed, the various background, the history of IBC, and what are the objectives and how it is implemented at IBBI level. And further, what are the roles of technology in IBBI and how it has been helpful to all stakeholders of IBBI. Now I hand over to Shri Rahul Khanna to have a detailed background and brief of IBC and Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India.
Namaskar, I am Rahul Khanna, AGM Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Today we are going to have a discussion about the use of technology in IBC ecosystem. Over a period of years, we have seen the companies, creditors, debtors, lenders, and insolvencies. Insolvencies have been treated along with the law of land at that point of time, and the laws have been improved over a period of time from depending upon the gaps in the existing laws. In 2016, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code was introduced to plug the gaps between the previous legal system and to have a shift in fundamental approach towards insolvency. Along with the improvements that are visible on the screen, that earlier laws used to take more time, the recovery was low, the information asymmetry was there, a lot of legal disputes used to happen. This was identified and tried to cater to in the new ecosystem. So in the next slide, we would see that how this law is different. This is actually a market-driven resolution approach where all the players will be having equal information, as well as it is a time-bound approach that anything and everything has a timeline, so that the process is completed well in time, because the earlier the resolution, the better the realization of the assets. Now we'll discuss about this in the next slide in detail. IBC has envisaged 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, Adjudicating Authorities, Information Utility, and Insolvency Professionals. We start with the first point, that insolvency starts with the default. If the default is there, only then the company can be taken into insolvency. So the first pillar of the insolvency IBC is IU. The code has envisaged IU as the one technologically driven institution where the complete information flow happens automatically from financial creditors to the IU and disseminated to different stakeholders. Like if default is there, there has to be a debt. All the information about the debt from financial creditors goes to IU automatically, and that needs to be authenticated. And once the default happens, that also that information flows from FCs to IU automatically. Financial creditors passed on that information through technology to information utility, and that information is being authenticated from the different stakeholders, and that provides us the record of default. That record of default can be easily downloaded and can be produced into the court of laws to prove that the default has been there, and the insolvency proceedings should be started towards that. Now coming to the second pillar, Adjudicating Authorities, one of the most important pillar, because the regulatory guidelines are being run through them. So Adjudicating Authorities, NCLTs, have developed their technology-driven platform e-court system, where all the documentation can be done online at any point of time, and there's no foundation of physical location. So it can be done from anywhere, and the status of cases, the proceedings, results can be seen from online only. Now coming to Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, IBBI. Since IBBI is the regulator for IPs, Insolvency Professionals, so and all the information that IBBI gets, most of it is through IP. I'll be defining them along side by side. So Insolvency Professionals is the person who is going to handle the full insolvency process during that timeline, and it has the responsibility to maintain the delicate balance between upholding the interest of different stakeholders, compliance with the rules, as well as running the company as a going concern. So it's a very delicate balance. During that, IPs run multiple processes simultaneously. So it has to be very it is very pertinent that those professionals are provided with the digital platform, so that they can do they need not spend their time in regulatory filing, physical filing, as well as doing different process core other than what is required from them in terms of the resolution. So all the filings that IP needs to do to IBBI is online. Rather, the full process starting from the registration of the professional to the fee payment to the filing and every other thing is online, and the information is passed on to IBBI. Now, the information that IP provides is in two categories. One is the process related information, which is confidential, that is available to IP only. The other information that IP provides is in the which is not non-confidential type and in the interest of different stakeholders. So that information is, once it is provided to IBBI uses it for the benefit of different stakeholders. I'll give you an example. Whenever an applicant wants to file an insolvency proceeding against a CD, he on that entity the applicant has to file one form, IAAA, intimation of application. As soon as that form is filed, the IBBI gets that information flows to IU, since having a very good integration with all the FCs, IU passes on that information to all the financial creditors. All the financial creditor is related to that CD. So all the financial creditor gets to know that status of the CD, that it has defaulted, whether to them or to other people, so they can firm up their course of action. This is a very recent development. Earlier, what used to happen is when an insolvency application is admitted to the NCLT and the company goes into CRP, at that point of time, that information used to be disseminated. But now, in order to have the better timing of the information dissemination, this has been developed that as soon as intimation comes to IBBI, that information flows to IU and different financial creditors. Now, coming to the second aspect, as soon as the company gets admitted to insolvent CIRP through NCLT, so IP has to do public announcement. That public announcement requires that all the creditors, all the stakeholders in the for the CD has to put their information and start their course of action. So as soon as that public announcement happens, IP within 3 days, maximum timeline is 3 days, provides that information to IBBI, and as soon as that information is provided to IBBI circulates that information to all the subscribers of its website at the end of the day. So everyone gets to know that this company has been admitted to NCLT and we need to file claims or do whatever the action that we need to take. So all the workmen, so this information flows to all the information provided by IU is for FCs, and this information is for general public. So everyone gets to know. Now the claims, which is a very important aspect of the whole process, the claim admission. As per the regulation, IP has to file the claims digitally once it is verified. So as soon as the claims are filed to IBBI by IP, that list is being put up on the website of IBBI, and everyone can go there and see whether their claims have been admitted, rejected, or whatever has happened, and take the necessary course of action. So the information is quite transparent, is easily available, and is centrally available. So that is how the technology is being used in different aspects. Now coming to IP. IP has multiple processes being run at the same time. So when IP has to be assisted with technology in other aspects also, apart from regulatory filing. Also, whenever a company gets admitted into insolvency, whenever a company weakens in terms of its financial, there are only two aspects to it. The end result is, one is restructuring and change of management. The other is the company gets liquidated, say assets got sold, and it got closed. So in both of the three things, the earlier principles that we talked about the code, that it is a market driven process, time bound, and same level of information has to be there with all the stakeholders. Now this is for this one, for any efficient market to work, so that the multiple players come. Efficient market has three rules. One is the low cost of transaction, information should be there, and multiple players should be there, so that the market to function efficiently. Now coming to that factor, IBBI has empaneled two PDAs, platform for distress assets, which IP can run its full process, starting from inviting claims to invitation of resolution plan and evaluation of those resolution plans digitally. The data is in these PDAs are secured. The data is both the data in transit and data at rest, both are encrypted and is available to the only relevant stakeholders to which the access is provided. Now these PDAs also have liquidation platform. So these are single platforms. These are the platform where all the auctions can happen. IBBI is also in the process of empaneling more auction platforms, because all the stakeholders can come at that place, and that market can have multiple players, and efficient price discovery can happen in terms of distress assets also. So coming to this one, and now we'll be seeing the life cycle of a company. Earlier, the life cycle of a company was incorporation, success of the business, decline, and closing. But now with the introduction of IBC, what used to happen is that company after decline gets into CIRP, and there is change of management or a proper resolution. After proper resolution, the company is being run by a different entity and can go into growth phase. In terms of technology, what we identify here is technology is all about data. So data is being captured at different stages in different formats. Most of the data has been captured in different formats to different regulators, and some of the data is not available presently. But the more data that we can collect from the system, the more helpful it is going to be to different stakeholders. Now I'll pass on the presentation to my colleague, Mr. Pankaj.
Yeah, welcome once again. So thank you, Shri Rahul Khanna ji, for having a good insight on IBC, how the background was, how it's implemented, and how it has been fruitful to all the stakeholders. So thank you, Shri Rahul Khanna ji. Now I'll take forward this presentations to the technology front, which is our main core topic. So how we have exactly taken this IBC into complete digitization. So as of now, all the processes, like certainly 99.99% of the processes are digitized in our IBBI ecosystem, and how it's fruitful and fueling the growth of IBC ecosystem. So let's have a look. So there are basically three types of stakeholders, which you can see in this presentation. One is regular, second is intermittent, third is internal. So we get flows of inflows and data and information, or whatever is the suggestions from all the stakeholders. So like suppose we say what is regular type of stakeholders. So these are the core stakeholders, which is insolvency professionals or registered valuers or information utility or insolvency professional agencies. So what happens whenever these people operate on their website or on their processes, and while submitting any form, if they feel like there is any suggestion or something is there, so they come up with us, and they have a mechanism with us to inflow the ideas, the data processes, by which we improve our website and the processes involved digitally. The second one is intermittent stakeholder. These are the complainants and researchers, data seekers, and public. So while we get complaints from other stakeholders, so which is general public, and also like other data seekers also, we get some information. So this day-to-day activities, whatever we get on the portal, we get it scrutinized and we get it converted into more refined form of version of website. So that's why you can see like our website is completely, technologically core of IBC, wherein which all the processes are running on 100% digitalized mode. The third internal stakeholder is internal divisions of IBBI. Whenever we form any regulation, we form any act, when we form any circular, So that's get implemented in the internal system of IBBI, which is also digitized at present level. Coming to the next slide. So I'll just give you a brief overview what all our IBBA website is all about. So our website has a what's new section. So this is the most important section whenever we come up with any regulation, any act, any circular, any order. So any document which needs to be disseminated through website. So that comes into this what's new section. So this what's new section also has one subscription quality, this subscription thing, which can be subscribed, and suppose if some input is coming to that section, so this will be disseminated to all the stakeholders who have subscribed, and at present we are having around 67,000 subscribers to our website. The second one is legal framework. This will be detailed in the next slide. Media, events, resources, publication. So all the media and resources, whatever we have with respect to IBC ecosystem, all are published and well maintained in the respective repositories of our website, which is in the home page of our website. Orders, public comments, and discussion papers. So while we, in a year or so, we come up with around 10 to 12 discussion papers which are floated to normal public for the suggestions, for quality improvements, for various other purposes. Whenever we receive this kind of comments, we get it filtered, we get it we route it through internal approvals, and then we make necessary changes in circulars or any of the act or regulations. So this is how our IBBI website and homepage looks all about, which is data centric. All the data and all the data with respect to IB6 ecosystem is epicentered and well maintained in our IBBI website, and this IBBI website is also bilingual. Last one is academicians corner. So suppose somebody wants to apply for any internship or so like activities in IBBI, they can also apply from online mode. So that's what I was speaking about legal framework. So whenever there's, since IBBI is a statutory body and legal body, so whenever we get any acts, regulations, rules, or circulars, or notifications, or guidelines, so this is well disseminated through this channel, and this has a searchable engine also, which can be sorted and searched through date or subject. So this is the right now. This is the knowledge repository on our web portal, wherein which we cover media coverage, that is all the newspaper articles in our IBC ecosystem are well mannered and date-wise selected and have been published in our website. So at present we are having more than 15,000 of media coverage. So there are press releases, media and newsletters, other publications, and annual reports. Everything is published on the publication section of our website, while resources section covers speeches, reports, videos, articles, interviews, and video lectures. This is a essential database for any of the stakeholder which goes through and learns activity, like how the IBC and IBBI is improving, or what are the updates on the IBBI ecosystem. These are the forms which are available in the download section, wherein which all the stakeholders can make good use of all these forms while preparing their draft section or anything else. So this is the unique feature of our website, that is role-based login. So role-based login is something you can enter your username and password, and you will have a different view altogether. As we all know, like IBC has lot many processes and lot many compliances to do. So we have made all these role-based logins for all these stakeholders. So starting with insolvency professionals. So insolvency professionals are the core of any CRP process, which runs the company, which runs the city, which manages the claims, stakeholders, and all associated things in IBC. So whenever an insolvency professional logins through this window in our website, which is readily available, so he can fill various CRP forms, he can fill consent form, he can fill IAAA form, he can have claims register, he can publish any public announcement, he can give Form G, that is expression of interest for inviting resolution plans, and etc. So this is a one window login for IPs, wherein which he can comply and do everything. He can also manage his CPRs, which is a professional education thing which he has to carry mandatorily. Second one is the insolvency professional agencies. As we all know, like IBC is like one of the pillar is insolvency professional agencies. So whenever any insolvency professional gets registered himself through any mechanism, so this gets floated through insolvency professional agencies. So we have made all like digitize all these processes, the internal mechanism processes. Suppose any IP applies for registration, so this first will go to insolvency professional agencies. They will scrutinize these applications, and based on the merit, they will these applications will come up with the internal mechanism, that is IBBI. Third one is registered values. At present, we are having around 5,000 registered values with us. So same is the process. That's also single window login. They can register themselves, and through RVO, this application comes to IBBI ecosystem for scrutiny, verification, and finally registration and dissemination of certificates. Complaints and grievances. Any complaints and grievances, like any outside stakeholder who is not happy or is having any grievance and any complaint with respect to any stakeholder, so he can just register himself in the same website, that is ibba.gov.in, and he can raise a complaint to the stakeholder, and the complaint gets resolved within the stipulated timeline. Internal staff of IBBI. So as we all know, like IBC has a process as mentioned by Shri Rahul Khanna ji. There are 4 pillars. So whenever any stakeholder is applying for any registration or any application, so that gets floated through IPA, and ultimately it comes to IBBI for internal processes. So this internal compliances are done on the same website, although we have a different role-based module over here, and this gets managed, and all the applications, all the registered applications are get scrutinized and well maintained, and finally we disseminate the information on our website, whosoever gets registered with IBBI. NCLT. NCLT is a unique feature. So whenever any case gets admitted, so NCLT has a list of all IPs and whatever IP is doing. Suppose any IP is from this state, this city, he's having this much of experience, he's having so many of CPRs, which is the main essential thing. So NCLT has a one login window by which they can check all the details of IP, and they can shortlist any IP for any corporate data. Last one is employee corner. So employee corner is used for recreation activities and leave balances and all other activities with respect to HR and administration of IBBI. Going forward, so this is analytics about performance of IPs. Since in our IBC ecosystem, the main important role is how IP is selected and how IP will perform. The stronger the IP, the well behaved, the well professional the IP is, the high resolution chances of that corporate data is high. So in this presentation, you can actually see this is also placed on our front page of our website. This performance of IPs window enables, like, we can get all the information of IPs, his history, his AFA, his membership, and his details of assignments. We can also get like year-wise assignments, what he has done and how many types of assignment he has carried and in which capacity he has carried. We also show some diagram, some diagrammic view of these presentations of all this data. We have a good view on this on our website. So single point of information CD. Suppose somebody wants to have any information about CD, that is corporate data. So when it is listed, when it is admitted, what are the orders associated, and what all are the information, such as when the Form G is published, when the public announcement is done, what is the summary of outcomes, what are the auction notices related to it. So everything is published in this single point of information, that is corporate processes. So we have also recently got a new IP filter list, which enables you can, for any segment, for any industry, you can search IPs based upon how the industry is with respect to in which city he resides and etc. So this enables all the stakeholders, especially banks and NBFCs, whosoever is admitting any corporate data, he can select IP in a well determined manner. So if he wants to have something from oil and gas sector or something from XYZ sector, he can select IPs from this sector using this mechanism of our portal. So moving towards safeguards of technology in IBBI. So since IBBI is a statutory organization, is a statutory body, So we have got all this technology and website implemented on a NIC driven platform that is uh, a web application firewall and VPN. So all our resources and all our access to the website is well managed and well secured through secured connections only. So nobody from outside can enter into the website. Servers are running in master and slave technology. So whenever uh, any uh, any user is trying to log in, and suppose there are multiple array of users on the same time and same date, so suppose if there is any load, so in order to have a load balancer system, we have got a master slave technology. So the load will shift, and there is no way like our website will crash down at any point in time. Authentications of forms are submitted by stakeholders by eSign and DSC. So this includes like they are authenticated. eSign is a well Aadhaar maintained portal, and process flow visibility to all the stakeholders. Email confirmation of forms is sent whenever any form is submitted by any IP for any compliance issues. So all the forms are emailed to them at the same instance to have a safeguard of technology. SMS authentication is made. Suppose if any form is being modified, anything is done by any IP, to have a second mode of authentication, we have done a SMS integration of all our platforms. So SMS is being hit to his registered mobile number. And digital payments, all our payments and processes are digitized, 100% digitized at present, and we are using payment gateway for this. Coming to the last leg of our presentation, so this is our future of IBBI website. So at present we are working on data dissemination policy, which will deal with, we are storing lots and lots of data, usable data, unusable data, but we are publishing only selected of those data. So presently we're working on like how we can disseminate data so that the confidentiality of all the stakeholders is maintained. Public dashboard. So if in future, in coming 2 or 3 months, suppose if somebody logins and checks in our website, so you'll see like you'll have a dashboard kind of pattern. So you can select any tab, any details you want about any IP, any CD, that will be just a one click away. We are working on that. Integration of our website with NCLT database. So whenever NCLT comes up with any order, or like any admission order or any withdrawal order, so that we are working with NCLT databases. So whenever the order is published in NCLT website, it will be simultaneously published in our IBBI website. Reassessment of various utilities, an integrated module for global search window and handling service request of stakeholders. So what we are going to do, since you must be aware, like banks are having this kind of activities like global search window and some service ticketing number. Whenever somebody wants to raise any complaint or any issue, so we'll have a one platform for everybody, that is a service request, that is a SR number. Whenever he will plug in any complaint or any issue, that will come into one portal, and that will get resolved within a stipulated timeline, that is turnaround time. So this is how we are working towards an integrated process, and this will help us to grow further. So with this, I'll thank you, and I'll request Shri Rahul Khanna ji to give closing remarks.
So it's like the what we have described here is the how the technology has been used in the IBC ecosystem, as well as in the interest of IPs, and how the data can be used from IBBI's website. Now the future is that we have to integrate with different stakeholders, and the data points that have been generated through the processes needs to be analyzed so that the regulation framing is better and data driven, so that the actual scenarios can be captured. So that is how we see that how we will be moving. And I'll thank you, Pankaj Dhabodkar ji, for this presentation also, and this is how we are thinking of closing.
Thank you to IGNOU also for live streaming this video. Thank you.
A warm welcome to IGNOU. If you are creative, if you can write well, and if you can visualize, mass communication is the correct career option for you. I am going to talk about postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communication, which is also the first year of MA program in journalism and mass communication. So any learner who has done a postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communication is eligible to take admission straight away into the second year of our master's program in journalism and mass communication. Duration to complete this program is minimum 1 year, and because we have this inherent flexibility in distance education system, you can take up to 3 years to complete this program. The minimum eligibility criteria for taking admission in this program is bachelor's in any discipline. To give you a glimpse of what are the various components of this program, we begin with telling you what mass communication is, what are the various areas, various branches of mass communication. Then we go on to tell you about the various reporting techniques and beats of reporting, followed by media ethics, the principles, the codes of conduct that you must follow, and we also focus on the writing skills and editing skills for print media. Now, this program comprises of 8 courses of 4 credits each. 25% of the entire program is practical based. So we have 6 theory courses and 2 practical courses. This program is so designed so that it will be able to make you more employable in the market. So it helps you build a career in print media, in radio, television, new media, as well as the allied subjects of mass communication, which could be media marketing, advertising, public relations and corporate communications, event management. This can also help you become an entrepreneur in areas like photography or having your own production house and so on. So I hope that you will be excited to join this program, and we will be waiting to welcome you here in IGNOU.
Greetings, Namaskar. The topic for this session is IBC and corporate governance. In the introduction, the structure of this session is that we are going to explain companies, corporate governance, economic growth. What is the relationship of the corporate governance with the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code? We'll try to understand what are insolvency, then the interrelation between the insolvency and the corporate governance, and also the various stakeholders in the corporate governance in the insolvency process. So how do we make a relation between companies, corporate governance and the economic growth? So as you know, companies are a critical part of the commercial environment where people who want to carry on business collectively can use resources effectively and productively. Companies play a fundamental, multidimensional and evolving role in promoting economic growth. Companies employ millions of people. Workmen support SME, MSME and economy. Companies provide us with goods and services and provide various facilities to the public. A company acquires legal personality by incorporation and are able to own property, make contracts, institute legal proceedings, and enjoy perpetual succession. So we are trying to explain, understand the importance of companies. हमारे देश में इकोनॉमी में, अर्थव्यवस्था में कंपनीज का क्या महत्व है? व्यापार अधिकतर कंपनियों के द्वारा किया जाता है. कंपनीज बहुत लोगों को एम्प्लॉय करते हैं, बहुत रिसोर्सेज, हमारे देश का बहुत सारे रिसोर्सेज भी कंपनीज में रहता है, एंड जो प्रोडक्शन होता है दैट हेल्प्स द इकोनॉमी एज अ होल. Now, let us try to understand insolvency. What is insolvency? So, insolvency occurs when a company is unable to pay its debts. Most common causes are overtrading, making expensive and ill-judged acquisitions, loss of market share, lack of cash flow, and the failure of management to respond to changed circumstances. Although when a company is in insolvency, we do not want to identify the issues or the causes, because the causes usually can be a financial failure or an economic failure. It may be because of the mismanagement, but there may be some extraneous factors as well, global economic factors. Some time back there was global financial crisis and a lot of companies failed. Now there is an economic crisis because of some political disturbances, instability. So there can be any reason, and there can be a pressure which can be put upon the companies which cause them to go into stress. Then on the commencement of the corporate insolvency resolution process, abbreviated as CIRP, a resolution professional, popularly called just as RP, takes control of the company's affairs. RP is to be independent from any parties or the corporate debtor. The insolvency resolution is preferred as optimal and beneficial, as it ensures that the company survives and continues to trade. This benefits the stakeholders, particularly employees who keep their jobs, and also the suppliers as they continue to supply their goods. So usually the company will work and control will be with the shareholders. Shareholders will appoint directors and key managerial personnel who will run the company. Till the time the company is running fine, the company management will be in control. But when there is a distress, then the debt will take over. So equity will give way, and the debt holders, that is the creditors or the lenders, will acquire control of the company. So साधारणतः जो कंपनी के जो ओनर्स होते हैं, शेयर होल्डर्स कंपनी का मैनेजमेंट संचालन करते हैं डायरेक्टर्स को अपॉइंट करके. पर जब कंपनी ठीक चल रही होती है तो ये मैनेजमेंट या कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस शेयर होल्डर्स तथा कंपनी मैनेजमेंट डायरेक्टर्स के द्वारा चलता है. पर जहाँ पर कंपनी क्राइसिस में आती है, प्रेशर में आते हैं और वो लोन की अदायगी ठीक टाइम पे नहीं कर पाते या कुछ स्ट्रेस मिलता है, अपने जो भी उनकी अदायगी होती है, जो भी दायित्व होते हैं वो पूरा नहीं कर पाते, तब जो लेंडर्स होते हैं, क्रेडिटर्स होते हैं, वो कंट्रोल अपने हाथ में ले लेते हैं और मैनेजमेंट को साइड में कर देते हैं, मैनेजमेंट के हाथ से कंट्रोल ले लेते हैं. तो ये एक कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस का नियम है कि जब तक कंपनी ठीक चल रही है तो इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर्स और कंपनी मैनेजमेंट डायरेक्टर्स कंपनी का मैनेज करेंगे. जब कंपनी में क्राइसिस आता है तब लेंडर्स और क्रेडिटर्स कंपनी का कंट्रोल अपने हाथ में ले लेते हैं. So now we are going to understand when the company goes into CIRP. So when company enters into the CIRP, then RP, so we have explained these terms, corporate insolvency resolution process, or when the company enters insolvency, then there is an individual who is the RP. RP is independent person. So RP is independent of the directors, shareholders and the creditors. He takes charge of the company and governs it. The RP is appointed by the NCLT, usually upon being proposed by the creditor, filing the insolvency application and confirmed by the committee of creditors. RPs may in some situations allow the directors to remain in office and or consult the directors on some issues concerning the life of the company. But the final decision rests with the RP and the directors have no power, because as we have already discussed, when there is insolvency process, the company management will lose its control. Although the same personnel may be performing some of their duties and obligation, however, the control goes into the hands of the resolution professional, and the existing company management will have to ask or seek permission from the resolution professional to continue their duties and take decisions. The RPs may, in some situations, allow the directors to remain in office and or consult the directors on some issues concerning the life of the company, but the final decision rests with the RP only, and the directors have no power because the power has shifted from the directors, the company management, to the resolution professional. Then we move on to liquidation. So in case the resolution process is successful, it is good. In case, unfortunately, the resolution process is not successful, company will be sent into liquidation. So in liquidation, the person who conducts the liquidation is called as the liquidator. So the same person may be as the resolution professional, and the same person may be appointed as the liquidator. So liquidator will generally speak with the directors, but they are less likely to consult with them, especially given the fact that unlike with CIRP, there might be a revival or rescue. However, the end game will be the dissolution of the company always. Liquidators are more likely to undertake more detailed investigations of what the directors have done prior to the liquidation occurring. So whatever is the reason why the company has failed, the causes for stress, there may be some fraudulent actions. Some directors may have siphoned off some assets. It is also possible, they have some related party transactions. They give transactions to their known and dear ones, and which are not disclosed. So all of those things can be investigated, and there can be a forensic audit conducted by the liquidator and those experts, and it can be known. In case the directors or any officials of the company are personally liable, then the same amount can be clawed back from those individuals. Now, what is the corporate governance during the insolvency regime? So as we know, again trying to put it across, the trigger for financial creditors' application is non-payment of dues. It is for this reason that Section 433E of the Companies Act of 1956 has been repealed by the code, and a change in approach has been brought about. So the approach has been changed now. The legislative policy is now to move away from the concept of inability to pay debts to determination of default. The said shift enables the financial creditor to prove, based upon documentary evidence, that there was an obligation to pay the debt and that the debtor has failed in such obligations. Now, 4 policy reasons for this shift in the legislative policy. First is predictability and certainty. Secondly, the paramount interest to be safeguarded is that of the corporate debtor, and admission into the insolvency resolution process does certainly protect it. Thirdly, in a situation of financial stress, the cause of default is not relevant. Protecting the economic interest of the corporate debtor is more relevant, because the corporate debtor has a lot of stakeholders. There are shareholders, although they are at the bottom of the line, but along with the creditors, there are other people, there are trade suppliers, there are employees, workmen, and there is a whole ecosystem. And hence, if the company's value is preserved, then all of those individuals' interest can also be simultaneously protected. Thirdly, in a situation of financial stress, the cause of default is not relevant. Protecting the economic interest of the corporate debtor is more relevant. Then fourthly, trigger that would lead to liquidation can be only upon failure of the resolution process. So it's a step-by-step process now. First, the insolvency application is admitted, and upon the insolvency application being admitted, the resolution will be tried. Try to revive the company, try to rescue the company. In case the resolution process or the rescue process fails, is not successful, only then the liquidation will be ordered. Now, there is a famous case of Chitra Sharma versus Union of India, decided on 9th August 2018 by the Supreme Court. And in the words of Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, the court must bear in mind that Section 29A has been enacted in the larger public interest and to facilitate effective corporate governance. Parliament rectified a loophole in the Act which allowed a backdoor entry to erstwhile management in the CIRP. We have the provision of Section 29A, which stipulates diverse categories of persons who will not be eligible to submit a resolution plan. And Section 30 of the IBC also clarifies that a resolution plan of a person who is ineligible under Section 29A will not be considered by the COC. So the corporate governance norms of the IBC are also strengthened. So in case there are people during their governance, the company has gone into loss, company has gone into a stress, there is insolvency. So those companies should be kept out of the resolution process. So they should not be allowed to neither submit the resolution plan nor participate in the liquidation process. Another very interesting judgment, Swiss Ribbons versus Union of India, decided on 21st January 2019 by the Supreme Court. In the words of Honorable Justice Rohinton Fallinariman, the primary focus of the IBC is to ensure revival and continuation of the corporate debtor by protecting the corporate debtor from its own management and from a corporate death by liquidation. The code is thus a beneficial legislation which puts the corporate debtor back on its feet, not being a mere recovery legislation for the creditors. The interests of the corporate debtor have therefore been bifurcated and separated from that of its promoters' management. So this is the objective of the IBC, that primary focus is the revival of the company, and secondary focus then continues with the preserving of the assets, and then third focus is for the distribution of those assets. If we graphically explain this process, the long title of the IBC is very comprehensive and it explains very clearly. It explains clearly the objects which is intended to facilitate, and it is succinctly explained in the case of Arun K. Jagatramkar versus Jindal Steel and Power on 15th March 2021 by the Honorable Supreme Court. First, so we have these 5 key aspects. First is time-bound process, which is a time-bound process of reorganization and insolvency resolution. Secondly, maximization of the value of the assets. Thirdly, to promote entrepreneurship. Fourthly, to facilitate the availability of credit. And fifthly, balancing the interest of all the stakeholders. So this is the objective which is mentioned in the preamble or the long title of the code itself. Now we come to the next stage. So we have discussed elements about the resolution process. In case the resolution is not possible, then company will be moving into liquidation. So what are the aspects of liquidation? Even in the case of liquidation, there is an element of corporate governance. How the Companies Act provisions can be read harmoniously with the insolvency and bankruptcy provisions to provide the best possible outcome in the liquidation process. So liquidation is one of the factual situations in which the provisions of Section 230 can be invoked. Section 231 envisages that an application in the case of a company which is being wound up may be presented by a liquidator who has been appointed under the Act of 2013 or under the IBC. The court has to see to the bona fides of the scheme and to ensure that what is put forward is not a ruse to dispose of the assets of the company in liquidation. The court usually does not sit in appeal over the commercial wisdom of the applicants. It will certainly consider whether there is a genuine attempt to revive the company and whether such revival is in public interest and conforms to the commercial morality. Now, this brings us to a sort of a recap that there are three modes in which a revival is contemplated under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. First is in the form of the corporate insolvency process, which is under Chapter 2 of the IBC. Then second mode is where the CD or its business is sold as a going concern within the purview of Clause E and F of the Regulation 32. And the third is when a revival is contemplated through the modalities provided in Section 230 of the Companies Act of 2013. So, the IBC comprehensive scheme is initiation of CIRP at the behest of a financial creditor under Section 7 or the operational creditor under Section 9 or the corporate debtor under Section 10. So, how does this process start? Again, if we take a recap, so there has to be insolvency filing, and there are three people or three participants who can file the insolvency application. Under Section 7, the financial creditor, who are usually the bankers, they can file insolvency application. Section 9, the trade creditors can file application, and Section 10, the company itself can file insolvency application. Then Chapter 2 provides for the appointment of an interim resolution professional and Section 17 and constitution of COC under Section 21. So, at the time the insolvency application is submitted, the party who is applying for the insolvency application, they also propose the name of the interim resolution professional. Usually, the adjudicating authority, the NCLT, will appoint the same person as the interim resolution professional, and then later on when the committee of creditor is constituted, who is going to supervise the insolvency process, they will confirm or appoint the resolution professional. Then Chapter 2 contemplates the submission of a resolution plan under Section 30 and the approval of the plan under Section 31. So, the usual format in which revival is contemplated is the resolution process. Resolution process is there, and resolution applicants are invited to submit resolution plans. Resolution plans are submitted, and Section 30 and 31 of the Act is applicable. Then the next stage, in case the resolution process is unsuccessful, then liquidation takes place. Liquidation is in part 3 of the in Chapter 3 of the part 2 of the IBC. So, if we move on to the summary, the Insolvency Code is a legislation which deals with economic matters and deal with the economy of the country. Working of the code is being monitored by the central government by expert committees that have been set up in this behalf. Amendments have been made both to the code itself as well as to the subordinate legislation made under it. This process is an ongoing process which involves all stakeholders. So, in जो भारतीय दिवाला process है, this is helpful for the economy. How? This is helpful for the companies by ensuring a structured process. The structured process is that the insolvency resolution is attempted, and the IBC is providing this impetus to the corporate governance, and in the working of this code, the flow of financial resource to the commercial sector in India has also increased exponentially as a result of the financial debts being repaid. So, the purpose of the corporate governance norms in the IBC are that the norm is being shifted. So, as we discussed, when the company is going good, the control will be in the hands of the management. The shareholders will be having the control, they will decide. But when there is a stress, the control moves away to the the creditors. But we have seen that, but IBC does not put the control and the direction totally in the hands of the creditors. However, there is an independent professional, the resolution professional, who is an expert and specially registered with the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board as insolvency professional, and they are officer of the court, and we have seen that there is independent person. So the independence is maintained, the transparency is maintained, and they are officers of the court. They are under obligation to the court, and during this insolvency process, the corporate governance norms are strengthened. Now, this is at the end, this is a very interesting statement which says that the defaulter's paradise is lost. In its place, the economy's rightful position has been regained. So how do we understand this statement? So defaulter's paradise. So gone are the days when the defaulters used to commit the defaults and they used to think that nothing will happen to them. It's not so. कंपनी को इट्स में भी पॉसिबल ऐसा हो सकता है कि कंपनी का जो नुकसान हुआ है, जो कंपनी अभी स्ट्रेस में है, उसका कारण कोई डायरेक्टर या कोई मैनेजमेंट ना हो, उसके कारण उनका बिजनेस प्लान का फेलियर भी हो सकता है, उनके कारण कुछ और भी हो सकते हैं. पर अगर कंपनी का नुकसान का कारण कोई मैनेजमेंट हैं या उनके प्रोमोटर्स हैं, तो अब वो दिन चले गए कि वो बच के निकल जाते हैं. ऐसा नहीं है. बहुत सारे केसेस हैं जहाँ पर कंपनी के इंसॉल्वेंसी रेजोल्यूशन या लिक्विडेशन के बाद भी जो मैनेजमेंट, जो प्रोमोटर्स थे, प्रोमोटर्स के अगेंस्ट केसेस चल रहे हैं बिकॉज दे हैड गिवन गारंटीज. सो बिकॉज द बैंक्स हैड टेकन गारंटीज, whatever was left in the resolution process or the banks had taken haircuts, they can now recover from the guarantors who were the promoters of those companies. So one part of the statement, yes, the defaulters' paradise is lost. So defaulters have to be careful, and it's not that they will go scot-free. They can make merry on their own. It's not going to happen. Now, the economy's rightful place has been regained. There are a lot of stakeholders, as we discussed in the starting. There are workmen, and the workmen's interests are also being considered. The operational creditors, mostly there are the trade creditors, suppliers, their interests are being considered. The regulator is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, and the adjudicatory authority are the NCLT. Thank you for this presentation, and I wish you happy learning.
Do you wish to be part of a television studio like this, or any other media system, or already part of any media system, want to enhance a new set of skills? Welcome to School of Journalism and New Media Studies. Here in the School of Journalism and New Media Studies, we are offering program for all set of people to learn and enhance their media skills. The vision of School of Journalism and New Media Studies is to generate a new set of professionals in the area of media and communication studies with understanding about role of media in the national development and global understanding. We offer innovative programs in the field of journalism and mass communication that sets the benchmark of high quality learning and teaching process at the national level. We offer these programs across the country with the help of our regional network as well as study center. Same manner, many of our programs are offered through online mode with a sophisticated learning management system. SOGNMS offers programs from PhD in Journalism and Mass Communication till certificate level. We have Masters in Journalism and Mass Communication. The eligibility is bachelor's degree, and we are introducing this program in 3 languages: Hindi, Tamil and English. Students from national and international students can join either through online mode as well as in the distance mode. We have 4 postgraduate diploma programs, specialized areas in the field of development communication, digital media, electronic media and journalism and mass communication program. And all these 4 programs are available in distance mode. 2 programs are available in online mode, development communication and digital media. And we have specialized certificate program in community radio. IGNOU employs various media and communication tools for better teaching and learning process. School of Journalism and New Media Studies utilizes this media system for delivering all our programs. Come and join with us for exploring a new career and enhance your media skills.
Namaskar. Today we'll be discussing yet another topic, nurture the nature. It's a very important topic indeed. We know fully well that how important the nature is for the humanity. This nature provides us a lot of benefits. It in fact guides us for a well-being, planetary well-being, and also for the well-being of the human beings, also human existence and whatnot. Everything we are getting from nature, and this nature needs nurture. We know, if you look at the dynamics, you know the kind of benefits, the kind of services it is providing to us, it is immense. For instance, we are getting the food, feed, fodder, energy, medicine and genetic resources from nature. If you look at the statistics, about 2 billion people are still dependent on wood fuel. It's a traditional fuel for their primary energy needs. And also, if you look at it very carefully, more than 4 billion people are dependent on the nature for the traditional medicine, to meet their health needs. So this is how the importance of nature is. And also, if you look at the statistics on the agriculture production, the global cereal production, if you look at it, almost 3 billion tons, the global cereal production. So that is contributed by the nature. And it also gives us a lot of, other benefits like ecosystem services, like, the regulation of air, climate regulation, pollinators, the pollinator diversity, the kind of, the insects and everything, it has been provided by the nature only. And also certain cases it also provides resilience to the ecosystem. I'm talking about the biosphere also. It provides a lot of resilience. So it reduces or minimizes the impact of hazards. So that is another benefit of nature. And it also sometimes, it provides us invaluable thing, which is, it cannot be replaced. That is how the nature is important for us. And all the more important is that we need to take utmost care to nurture the nature, or to provide the sustenance, or in other words, to provide the best possible solutions for managing the nature sustainably. And if you look at it, the most important thing is that when you look at the benefits, the current benefit is the nature in terms of the terrestrial or marine ecosystem. It provides a wonderful service, because the climate condition, if you look at it, the climate change is a hot topic, or in other words, it's an emerging issue. And this terrestrial and marine ecosystem, is having the power to sequester the carbon. It has been estimated that it's almost 5.8 gigatons of carbon has been sequestered per year by the terrestrial and marine ecosystem, and this is provided by nature. And this 5.6 gigatons, it is almost equivalent to 60% of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. So look at it, how important it is for the climate change management also. So this nature is providing a lot of benefits to us. However, the existence, their contribution to the people, it is diverse. Or in other words, it is not equitably distributed across the global landscape. So in some pockets, the benefits are much more, or in other words, the nature provides a lot of benefits to the human beings. At some other regions, it is not so. So there is a lot of diversity is there, a lot of inequality it is there as far as the contribution of nature to the mankind is concerned. When you look at the distribution, in certain pockets of the global landscape, if you look at it, the food production is much, much higher. In, for instance, the prairies, I'm talking about the tropical or temperate grasslands, and the production, whether it's an agriculture production or the crop production, it is much, much higher. But at the same time, if you look at it, the Sahel region or the Sahara region or the tropical environment, it is much, much lesser because of the tropical condition and the climatic condition also. So this condition, the tropical environment, you can see whether if it is in the African continent, dark continent, if you look at it, the people are suffering from malnourishment, undernourishment, and many kind of, food related, food scarcity related or food insecurity related issues. So what I want to say is that this nature contribution to the people, it is almost, it is diverse, and in other words, it is inequitable in nature. Very good example is, another example is the tropical environment, whether it is Amazon forest, the tropical South American country, if you look at it, the Brazil, it is rich in the biodiversity. Amazon forest, think about it, it's a tropical rainforest, it is very rich in the biodiversity. It is providing a lot of benefits to the mankind. But at the same time, if you look at it, the conditions, they are facing a lot of other problems, the socioeconomic development, and many issues are, it is those people in the tropical environment, they face a lot of issues, particularly the socioeconomic issues, the educational things, and so on and so forth. So these are all the, the other side of the nature's contribution to the mankind. Having said that, a lot of benefits nature is providing to the people, because it incorporates a wonderful concept called biodiversity and ecosystem services and functions. So having said this thing, ecosystem services and functions, it's a huge concept. Nature is a huge concept because it's providing a lot of benefits. But human actions, at times, cause a lot of imbalance to the natural ecosystem. And this kind of imbalances is a very, very tricky issue for the simple reason is that because the damage to the natural ecosystem, at times it is irreplaceable. So we need to take the right steps at the right time. So that is the key aspect as far as the human action is concerned. The second important thing, when you look at the human actions, the most visible symptom is the loss of biodiversity. When you look at the loss of biodiversity, it's because the species, we don't know the kind of benefits the species is going to provide to us. So that is how this biodiversity is very important. Each and every species is having its own importance. It's having its own services to play to the ecosystem. So when you look at the biodiversity, the dynamics of biodiversity loss, the first and foremost important thing is that, the kind of loss, the species loss is huge. When I say huge, more than 1 million species are threatened or facing extinction. So that is a great amount, 1 million species are facing extinction. The second important aspect as far as biodiversity loss is concerned is the loss of local biodiversity. When I say local biodiversity, loss in terms of the local varieties, breeds, the animal breeds, and also the genetic diversity that is existing in the local population, that is lost. That is a very, very important aspect that has to be taken into account. Why? Because the endemic species will be lost. And when these endemic species or the local genetic biodiversity is lost, that can have a drastic effect on the human beings. It can have a drastic effect on other ecosystems, agricultural ecosystem, or even the animal husbandry, the sector itself. Even the economy also will be affected severely because of the loss of biodiversity, particularly the loss of local biodiversity. So, second aspect is that if you look at it, the communities, the biological communities that is existing in the unmanaged ecosystem. When you talk about unmanaged ecosystem, whether it's a forest ecosystem or any other ecosystem, it's a natural ecosystem. So it will be very rich in biodiversity. But when you look at the managed ecosystem like agro-ecosystem, the biodiversity and everything is managed by the human action. So there's a lot of variations will be there between the managed and unmanaged ecosystem. But because of the human action, repeated action, so year after year, we are bringing a lot of changes to the land use or a lot of changes to the agriculture system or agriculture landscape. Because of these actions, what happened, the biological communities, that is almost similar between the managed and the unmanaged ecosystem. The kind of biological assemblages, the communities have become similar, and that is a cause of concern. Why? Because of the similarity, in the biological communities that can, hamper the growth of the agriculture system, or for that matter also this particular action, because of the assemblages, it's very much similar. There can be a possibility of an attack by an invasive species, and possibly a new organisms can evolve itself, and that can have a drastic negative effect. For instance, if you look at it, because the human beings are trying to change the trajectory of biological evolution. So the trajectory of biological evolution, if it is changed, there is a possibility that a new organism can emerge, or an organism which a lot of resistance or tolerance can emerge. For instance, weeds, the pathogens, pest and disease causing organisms, it can be more resistant and it is more tolerant also. In that case, these organisms can have a drastic effect on the ecosystem. For instance, weeds, because it is an unwanted plant. There are a lot of weeds, and a very common one, the Parthenium styroforas. It's a very common weed. This can have a drastic effect on the crop production. So that is the point as far as the biodiversity loss, or in other words, the impact of it on the ecosystem, I wanted to stress at this point of time. And when you look further, because I've talked about the drivers, we need to look at the drivers at a holistic way. So when you look at the drivers as a concept, drivers of that bring a lot of changes to the natural system, or that bring a lot of imbalance in the natural ecosystem. So when you look at the drivers, it can be of direct drivers and indirect drivers. So when I talk about direct drivers, there are 5 important direct drivers. One is the land use changes. The second is the organism or exploitation of the organisms. The third is the climate change, and the fourth is the the kind of pollution, whether it's a water pollution or air pollution, and the last one is the alien species. So these are the direct drivers that can bring a lot of change in the natural ecosystem. So having said all the drivers, these drivers are driven, the direct drivers are driven or manipulated or influenced by the indirect drivers. Let us see the indirect drivers later. So now let us see one by one the direct drivers. The first and foremost is the land use change. When I talk about the land use change, if you see, since the industrial revolution, if you look at it, a lot of changes that has happened in the agriculture system, or in other words, the total, the global landscape, if you look at it, a lot of changes has taken place. If you look at it, 1/3 of the global land area is covered by the agricultural activity. 1/3, because this is a prominent land use change that has been observed since the industrial revolution. The second important change is that the same is the case with the marine system also. We started exporting more of fish, more of the marine mammals also, marine organisms also. We have started exporting more because of the need, increasing need because of the population is increasing, and a lot of demand for those organisms, because protein demand is met by the fish and other population, the marine population. So the land use change is the critical component. Because of the land use change, a lot of imbalance has taken place in the natural system. Okay. And the second important aspect, as far as the drivers are concerned, I just talked about the organism exploitation. I was talking about the fishes, because we are trying to exploit more of production. We are trying to extract as much as possible the fish product. We have to increase the fish production. That means we are extracting the fish resources from the marine system. That also, over exploitation is definitely harmful, and that causes imbalance in the aquatic ecosystem. The same is the case with the terrestrial ecosystem, because when I talk about the exploitation, we are exploiting the forest resources. We are trying to go for harvesting, logging, or whatever, timber or timber wood. We are just cutting it. So these kind of over exploitation also causes a lot of harm to the system. The best example is the deforestation that has taken place in the Amazon rainforest. The kind of deforestation, the dynamics, the trends, it is definitely a cause of concern. The third important aspect, as far as the drivers is concerned, direct drivers are concerned, it is climate change. So when I talk about climate change, because this climate change, when you look at the last century, the temperatures increased to an extent of 1 degree centigrade last century. That was tangible things we have seen in the last century. Not only that, the increase in surface temperature, the kind of the extreme events also has started increasing. So there are a lot of variability that has started emerging in the last century, and in the present century also. If you look at the last 2 decades, we have experienced a lot of extreme events, whether it's a floods or droughts. We have started experiencing it. These kind of extreme events can have a drastic effect on the phenology of the species, the distribution, species distribution, the flowering pattern, and every aspect of the species will be affected because of climate change. And that can have a drastic effect on the existence of the species. So that can lead to what? The loss of species. So the climate change is a very, very important aspect that is causing a lot of imbalance in the natural ecosystem. The fourth important aspect is the pollution. We can easily understand the water pollution, air pollution, how it is having an impact on the biological diversity. The best example I wanted to give is the marine plastic pollution. It's a recent phenomenon, and when you look at the marine plastic pollution, the quantum is whatever the marine plastic pollution, it has increased tenfold since 1980s. The quantum is tenfold increases there. And this tenfold increase in the marine plastic pollution has caused a lot of harm to almost 300 species, mammals, or the fish population. It has been severely affected because of the marine plastic pollution. So the pollution is yet another direct driver. The last one is the invasive species, because invasive species will be more active. It is having the power to use the resources effectively. It will be using more of resources. For example, a weed population, or a weed, if it is an invasive species, whether it's a Lantana camera or a Parthenium histriophorus, any weed for that matter, because it is out of place. When I say out of place, it is it is having an invasive nature. It start using the resources as much as possible. And in the process, it will be affecting the native population. So what will happen, because of this thing, the native population, the species, that will be eroded because of the alien species. Okay, so this is all about the direct drivers. When I talk about the indirect drivers, it's a very interesting aspect. When I talk about the indirect drivers, as I said, these indirect drivers are influencing the direct drivers. Okay, so the first and foremost aspect of indirect drivers is the human population dynamics, the trends. We know it, the present day population, human population is 7.2 billion, and we are expecting 10 billion by 2050. It is enormous, and in fact the human population has doubled since 1970s. The human population has doubled, and that will definitely have an impact on the ecosystem, because they start using a lot of resources, whether in terms of the urban area development, whether in terms of the infrastructure development, in terms of the agriculture development, because the need is increasing because of the increase in the population, and because of the increasing demand for energy and material that can have an effect on the ecosystem. Okay, and as far as the human population, the dynamics is concerned, because along with that thing, the global economy also has developed so much. When you look at the last 5-6 decades, the global economy is also 4 times it has developed. 4 times, it's a huge amount. And the same is the case with the global trade also. So almost 10 times the global trade has increased since 1970s. These statistics are very, very important. For simple reason is that look at the kind of development that we are experiencing in the last 5-6 decades, and this development will have a drastic effect on the ecosystem, because each and every aspect of the ecosystem, the generic processes that is affected because of the direct and indirect drivers. So this all the basic indirect drivers. Along with that thing, the very interesting aspect when we talk about a human population dynamics, very interesting aspect is the production statistics, or in other words, the irrational production, consumption, because we create a lot of waste, and that is also having a lot of harm, causing a lot of harm to the environment. So these are all the indirect drivers. So when you look at the direct and indirect drivers, this is causing a lot of imbalance in the ecosystem. What all those imbalances? What are the problems that we are facing as far as the nature's contribution to the people is concerned? Okay, the first and foremost important thing is the soil organic carbon, soil organic matter, that has started declining. Soil organic carbon and organic matter in the soil started declining. If you look at the statistics, almost 75 billion tons of soil is eroded every year from the arable land. 75 billion tons of soil is eroded, and that is a significant amount. Why? Because as I said, that almost 1/3 of the total global landscape, if you look at it, has been occupied by the agricultural activity, and that is the reason why this also has created a lot of harm to the land also. The land degradation is second important effect. When I talk about land degradation globally, if you look at it, almost 25% of the arable land is degraded. 25% of arable land is degraded in terms of the capacity, productive capacity or fertility capacity, or in fact all other the physical and chemical and biological properties of the soil is affected because of the human action, or in other words, both the indirect and direct drivers. This is the second important pitfalls, or in other words, the drawbacks we are facing as far as the effects are concerned. I'm talking about the impact of human beings on the natural ecosystem. The second important aspect is the pollinator diversity. It's a very interesting aspect. When you talk about pollinator diversity, almost 75% of global crop types, if you look at it, 75% of global crop types are cross-pollinated. That means that the pollinator diversity is very, very important thing. And this pollinator diversity is affected because of the human action. It can be any aspect. I mentioned about the 5 drivers, the direct drivers. That is causing a lot of harm to the pollinator diversity also. This is the third important effect of ecosystem imbalances. The fourth important is the regulation. When I talk about regulation, it's a very interesting aspect, because the climate regulation, everything is because of the nature. And this climate regulation or air regulation, the quality of air, so everything has been monitored or modulated, everything is done by the nature. And if that nature is affected, that can have a lot of effect on the regulation aspect of also, because the earth we are talking about is a self-sustaining system. It's a big ecosystem, and this self-sustaining ecosystem has been affected by the drivers, particularly the human action. So these are the problems that we are facing it. So what need to be done? What steps we need to take? So the first and foremost important step, because the problems are many, but the steps, if you look at it, we need to take each and every step very carefully. The first and foremost important step is the transformative changes. We wanted to bring in kind of a fundamental change in the system. When I say fundamental change, it should be systemic in nature, and it should cut across all the sectors, whether it's an ecological sector or economic sector or a transportation sector. It should cut across all the sectors. That kind of transformation, that kind of transformative change is required for bringing in balance, for bringing in a kind of an harmony between the human beings and nature. And that harmony is definitely a very important aspect, that in fact it's a goal to us. Okay, so the transformative change is a very, very important thing, and for that to happen, we need to take a lot of steps, and those steps are very critical. And first and foremost important step is providing incentives. We have to provide incentives, and also along with incentives, we need to go for capacity building. When I talk about capacity building, it's a very critical component, because this capacity building is kind of bringing in kind of an awareness about the environmental sustainability. The people should be aware about the natural benefits, the benefits that is provided by the nature, and at the same time, the incentives also should be in a proactive manner. When I say proactive, these incentives should not be cause harm, environmental harm, that should not happen. So the incentive, whatever it is provided, whether in the form of a subsidy or whatever it's provided by the government, that should be proactive in nature, and that should take care of the environment. So that is the first important aspect that can bring in the transformative changes. The second important aspect, as far as the transformative change is concerned, is the cooperation between the sectors. Each and every sector, it's not siloed. So each and every sector should operate along, cutting across all the sectors. That is the most important thing. So the cooperation is the most important aspect that has to be taken into account. And the third important thing is that we need to take all the preemptive action also. Sometimes it is required. It can be either in terms of the environmental regulations, or in a very key aspect that has to be noted at this point of time is that we have to make the system more resilient. So that is these are the five aspect that is to be taken into account for bringing in transformative changes. And other things is that we need to take care of the sustainability principles also, whatever the production system we are talking about, whether it's agriculture or aquaculture, we need to bring in the sustainability aspect also. So these are all the key aspects that we need to take into account. And the most important thing is that if we look for the land-based, the mitigation, climate change mitigation aspects, or nature-based solutions, it's having a lot of benefits, positive benefits to the environment. So nature-based solutions are at most, essentially, it's very, very important thing. So to sum it up, what needs to be done is that we need to be having multiple aspects, multiple objectives. We need to have it, and a kind of nature positive goals, like your sustainable development goals, like your Paris Agreement that talks about the carbon neutrality. We need to talk about nature positive goals that will have certain objectives in terms of measurable objectives. And second important aspect is we need to bring in kind of a governance changes, whether it's a local, regional, national, at the global level also. Kind of a global governance initiatives are required, and that initiatives can provide wonderful benefit in terms of a way forward to achieve global sustainable economy. Thank you very much.
We wear clothes on a daily basis. But have we ever wondered, where do our clothes come from? Who makes our clothing? And who are the people and the process responsible for the whole manufacturing of our clothing? If you want to know more about this, Indira Gandhi National Open University from the School of Continuing Education has launched a program which is Certificate in Apparel Merchandising. There are many benefits after doing this program. You can become a designer in various fields. It can be fashion designer, apparel designer, costume designer, or even a textile designer. One can also work as a fashion consultant. Research and development is another field which one can take up after doing this certificate course. Going into academics is another perk after doing this program. Getting into fashion houses or fashion studios as an intern is also a very good option post doing the certificate in apparel merchandising. The basic eligibility of the program is 10+2. The duration of the program is 6 months to 2 years. The program is also available for both the admission cycles, which is July and January. The exams are conducted twice a year, in June and December. So what are you waiting for? Join this program and get an enriching knowledge in the field of apparel merchandising. And to do so, you can log on to the official website of the university, www.ignou.ac.in.
Dear learners, welcome to teleconferencing session. Now we are going to discuss about BPAG 171, that is disaster management course. In that today now we are going to discuss about Disaster Management Act, policy and institutional arrangement. Before starts, I'll read about what is disaster management. What is disaster management? As per Disaster Management Act, disaster management means continuous integrated process of planning, organizing, coordinating and implementing measures which are necessary or expedient for prevention of any danger or threat of any disaster and mitigation or reduction of any risk or any disaster or any severity or its consequences, capacity building, preparedness to deal with any disaster, prompt response to threatening disaster situation, assessing the severity or magnitude of effects of any disaster, evacuation, rescue and relief and rehabilitation and reconstruction. So the basic aspect of disaster management is that planning, organizing, coordinating, implementing measures. So what are the things we have to plan, organize, coordinate and implement and measures? So we have to plan and coordinate and everything of prevention of any danger, mitigation measures, preparedness measures, capacity building measures, prompt response to that, assessing severity or magnitude effects are like evacuation, rescue, relief, how to manage rehabilitation, how to do the reconstruction. So these are the things that basics of the disaster management. So all those components I have mentioned in the act are not an isolated activity.
Okay, like for example, only disaster preparedness won't help. You have to work on that disaster preparedness, rehabilitation, reconstruction, relief, evacuation, everything. It is not an isolated activity. Each activities are totally interrelated with each other. Okay, once you have done the, like for example, if any disaster comes, first it used to start with the relief, then after that they used to give relief, evacuation, or search operation also used to there. After that they used to provide the immediate relief to the people. Then once the immediate relief has done, after that they used to give the long term rehabilitation and reconstruction plan. In the rehabilitation reconstruction, what are the things used to be there? They used to give the livelihood measures, and they used to construct the proper houses or building measures or proper livelihood opportunity. These livelihood, once you have got the proper livelihood opportunity, you automatically prepare for the another disaster. So all those activities are not an isolated activity. It is one or the other things are interrelated with each other. So disaster management can be defined as the organization and management of resources and responsibility. It's like organization and management of resources and responsibility. So for dealing with the humanitarian aspects of emergencies, in particular, like for example, if you take preparedness, response, recovery, in order to lessen the impact of disaster also. Like in India, the institutional arrangement for disaster management understood through the various steps initiated in our country managing disaster effectively. Like before starts with like in this session we are going to cover about the like important like our disaster management act and national level and state level important institution only. So before going to the disaster management act, how this act has been evolved, and before the act what are the things happened which happened. So before that there was a committee that is called high powered committee on disaster management. In the high powered committee was constituted in August 1999 under the chairmanship of Sri JC Pant. He is a secretary Ministry of Agriculture. Okay, and this was the first attempt in India towards a framing systematic, comprehensive and holistic approach towards the disaster. This high powered committee has recommended framing a single legislation at the national and state level, like namely like National Act for Calamity Management and a Model State Disaster Management Act, which was later modified the National Disaster Management Act and the State Disaster Management Act. And also, this high powered committee has more focused on the process oriented and participatory approach only. Like for example, if you take in 1990 before 2000, most of the time disaster management means like after the disaster used to provide the relief measures, rehabilitation measures. There is no what used to say there is no preparedness measure. There is no, you haven't prepared the people for the next disasters or something. So after 2000 only the scenario has been changed a lot. So after, based on the recommendation of the high power committee on disaster management, the like for example the need to frame the disaster management act and further national level disaster management authority also, it got that opinion had been get strengthened. So the disaster management bill was introduced in the parliament in 2002, and finally it came into on December 23, 2005. The disaster management act was enacted in the government of India. So after this enacted in 2005, it this disaster management act has a multidisciplinary focus on disaster prevention, risk reduction, and also a move from the relief centric regime. I already mentioned that only. Earlier we used to have that the relief centric mission, like we used to provide the relief material, food, and everything, and they used to provide the money. That's only. Now, after this act, we have started more focusing upon the prevention methods, preventing measures also. So, as per the based upon the Disaster Management Act, the institutional framework under the act mandated. This act has said that you have to create a certain institution, that is national level, that is National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, and state level SDMA, that is State Disaster Management Authority, as the bodies are responsible for the disaster preparedness and risk reduction in the respective levels. Okay, and also they have started the disaster management division of the Ministry of Home Affairs. It used to retain the responsibility of overall steering of national disaster response, and also this act has mandated the all the ministries and the department to draw up their own plans in accordance with the national plan. And also the Disaster Management Act further contains the provisions for financial mechanism, such as the creation of funds for the response, National Disaster Mitigation Fund, similar funds for at the state and the district level also. Like for example, in the based on the act, they have introduced first institution is the National Disaster Management Authority. National Disaster Management Authority at the national level and State Disaster Management Authority at the state level. After that also they have created a separate division in Disaster Management Division in Ministry of Home Affairs, and lot of financial arrangements also they have introduced, like how to share the funds with the state and the center. There's so many things, like I have given the glimpse about the act only. Remaining sir, it's available in our website also. You can see about that. So as per Disaster Management Act 2005, there was an institution created, National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA. On 23rd December 2005, the government has enacted the Disaster Management Act, which envisaged the creation of National Disaster Management Authority. It's headed by the Prime Minister, and the State Disaster Management Authority is headed by the respective Chief Minister to spearhead to implement a holistic and integrated approach to disaster management in India. So you have to notice here that the national level is headed by the Prime Minister and the state level is headed by the Chief Minister. Okay, so the National Disaster Management Authority is the apex body for disaster management, and it has the responsibility for laying down the policies, plans, guidelines for disaster management, and coordinating for enforcement for effective response. So the major responsibility is that they have to drop the plans, policies, guidelines, and disaster management, and they have to coordinating their enforcement for the effective response also. Like for example, if you open that disaster management website, you can find that they have given a various guidelines. They have given a guidelines for the chemical disaster, chemical, biological, radiological disaster. They have given guidelines for cyclone, earthquake, and landslide and slow avalanches. They have given a various guidelines they have brought out after that also, and they have given a school disaster management guidelines. Likewise, only they have come up with a lot of policy and guidelines methods also. These guidelines have been assisted with the central ministries, departments, and states to formulate the respective state disaster management plans. Like for example, this NDMA used to provide the broad guidelines only. Based on that, the state has to formulate the respective disaster management plans, because their disaster is varies from city to state to state and location to location. So you can't make a not only single plan for throughout the India. So the respective of the state has to make their own disaster management plan. And also the NDMA also can take the other measures, like if they consider necessary, like for example prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and capacity building, and for dealing with a threatening disaster situation. Okay, and if there is any necessary, they have to they have to coordinate, or you can say they have to arrange necessary measures for like prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and capacity building exercises during disaster situations also. The central ministries or departments and state governments are expected to necessary cooperation and assistance to the NDMA for carrying out their mandate. The NDMA also oversee the provision and applications of funds for mitigation and preparedness measures also. And another also, NDMA has the power to authorize the departments or authorities concerned to make emergency procurement of provisions for materials for rescue relief in a threatening disaster situation or disaster. This like the NDMA has mandate to deal with all type of disaster, whether it is a natural, whether it is a man-made. Whereas such other emergency, like for example, requiring close involvement of security forces or intelligence agencies such as terrorism, counterinsurgency, law and order situations, serial bomb blasts, hijacking, air accidents, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapon system, and mine disasters, ports and harbor emergency, forest fire, oil field fires, and oil fields also will handled by the National Crisis Management Committee. However, if you look into that, NDMA has to formulate guidelines and they have to facilitate training and preparedness activities in respect of the chemical, biological, radiological emergencies, and other also, like for example, cross-cutting themes like not only major disaster like medical preparedness, psychosocial care, and trauma, community-based disaster preparedness, information and communication technology training, like another thing, like you can say that preparedness awareness generation, etc., etc. Also, they have to have a partnership with the concerned stakeholder. Okay, and another thing that NDMA has to do with they have to resources available with the disaster management at all levels, which are capable of discharging emergency support function will be made available to the nodal ministries and agencies concerned during with the times of such disaster. So by and large, if you look into that, the major aim is to that they have to manage the they have to create the policy guidelines and manuals, and also and they have to coordinate the various departments and nodal various ministries, departments, and nodal authorities and state governments also. So as per the act, the major functions of the NDMAs are like major aim is that as I already said, that lay down policies on disaster management. They have to approve national plan and approve plans prepared by the ministries or departments of the government of India in accordance with the national plan. It's not like that one plan used to help with that. Like wherever if you go to any hospital, you can find these hospital map and they used to return the contingency plan, and if you go to any theater they used to have a contingency plan, and if you travel in the train they have given the emergency chain also, and if you that they have given the emergency map to go out exist. These are used to be happen micro level. The same way the ministries and each and every department has to create their own plan also, and the major functions of NDMA is that lay down guidelines to be followed by the state authorities in drawing up the state plan, and they have to lay down the guidelines to be followed by the different ministries, department, and the government for the purpose of integrating the measures for prevention of disaster or the mitigation of effects in the development plans and the project, and coordinate the enforcement and implementation of the policy and plan for the disaster management. And then NDMA has to recommend a provision for funds for the purpose of mitigation. They have to provide such support to other countries affected by major disaster as may be determined by the central government, and take such measures for the prevention of disaster or the mitigation, preparedness, and capacity building dealing with the threatening disaster situation or disaster at may be necessary. And they have to create a broad policies and guidelines to functioning in the National Institute of Disaster Management. That thing I will come into the later. So these are the things that comes under the functions of National Disaster Management Authority. Then after that, important committee has mentioned in our Disaster Management Act is like National Executive Committee, that is NEC. This National Executive Committee has been constituted by the central government to assist the NDMA in dealing with the disaster situation. So in this regard, the functions of the NEC are to act as coordinating and monitoring body for disaster management and prepare the national plan, which is to be approved by the NDMA, and they have, and NEC also lays down the guidelines for preparing disaster management plan by different ministries, departments, and provide the necessary technical support to the state government authority. So this was the major functions of National Executive Committee. And another important authority it has mentioned in our Disaster Management Act is that State Disaster Management Authority. All state government are mandated under Section 14 of the Act to establish a State Disaster Management Authority in the state. The SDMA consists of the Chief Minister of the state as the chairperson, and members are like not more than 8 members. Most of the members are appointed by the chief minister only, and even in the state also they have a state executive committee. It comes under the section 22 of the act. Their main role is that creation of the state disaster management plan and implementing the national plan, and the SDMA is mandated under section 28 to ensure that all the departments of the state to prepare the disaster management plan as per the national and state authorities. So after that, in the micro level, there is a district disaster management authority. Section 25 of the Disaster Management Act provides for constitution of DDMA for every district of a state. So the district authority is responsible for planning, coordination, and implementation of Disaster Management Act, and to take such measures for disaster management as provided in the Act. Okay, and the major power of the disaster authority is district authority is to examine the construction in any area at the district to enforce the safety standards, and also arrange the relief measures and respond to the disaster at the district level. This DDMA is headed by the district collector of the respective district. So next is like National Institute of Disaster Management, that is called NIDM. In 1995, this has in 1995, with the purpose of implementation of the International Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Indian Institute of Public Administration has acted as a nodal ministry for disaster management in India, and they have established a National Center for Disaster Management, that is called NCDM. Okay, after this act, like for example, with the transfer of the subject of disaster management to the Ministry of Home Affairs, actually what happened initially, the disaster management was with the Ministry of Agriculture. After 16th October 2003, this Ministry of Home Affairs, the National Center for Disaster Management has been shifted to Ministry of Home Affairs, and after that, that NCDM has been later it has been renamed and upgraded as the National Institute of Disaster Management. This institute was inaugurated by the Home Minister of India on August 11, 2004. In our Disaster Management Act of 2005, it has granted the statutory status to the NIDM. This act holds the institute responsible for planning, promoting training and research in the area of disaster management, documentation, and development of national level information base relating to disaster management, policy formulation, developing prevention mechanisms, and prompting mitigation measures also. Like for example, the major objective of NIDM is to the capacity building. Okay, and they have to give the planning and promoting training and research program in the area of disaster management. So the basic objective of NIDM is that building disaster resilient communities by promoting public awareness and providing policy assistance to facilitate multidisciplinary and sectoral support for prevention strategies, technical assistance, implementation techniques, and know-how dissemination implementation technique, and know-how dissemination with respect to natural and man-made disasters. So these are the basic objective of NIDM. Now we are moving into the role of central government during disaster. As per the Act Disaster Management 2005, the central government will take all such measures as it deems necessary or expedient for the purpose of disaster management, and will coordinate actions of all agencies. Okay, the central ministries and departments will take into consideration the recommendation of the state government while deciding upon whether the pre-disaster requirements for deciding upon the measures for the prevention and mitigation of disasters. Also, the central ministries and the department will ensure integrate measures for the prevention and mitigation of disaster into the development plans and project, and make appropriate allocation of funds for the pre-disaster requirements, and take necessary measures for preparedness and to effectively respond to the disaster situation or disaster. And also the central government has the power to give direction to the National Executive Committee, state governments, that is NDMA, and State Executive Committee, or any other officers or employees to facilitate or assist in disaster management, and all these bodies and officials will have to comply with the such directions only. The central government also will extend the cooperation and assistance to the state government as required by them, otherwise it's deemed appropriate by it only. Now, if you come into the role of state governments, the primary responsibility for state disaster management is rests with the states. Okay, the institutional mechanism put it in place in the center, state, and the district levels, which help the states to manage disaster in an effective manner. The disaster, as per the Disaster Management Act 2005, it mandates that the state governments inter alia to take measures to for preparation of state disaster management plans, integration of measures for prevention of disasters, or mitigation into state development plans, allocation of funds, establishment of early warning system, and to assist the central government and other agencies in various aspects of the disaster management. So these are the so far I have discussed about the National Disaster Management Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, District Disaster Management Authority, National Executive Committee, State Executive Committee, and NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management. These has been mentioned in our Disaster Management Act itself. Later, in 2009, there was introduced National Policy on Disaster Management 2009. So the national policy framework has been prepared after due deliberation in keeping view with vision to build a safe and disaster resilient India for developing a holistic, proactive, and multi-disaster and technology-driven strategy for disaster management. It was understood that this could be achieved through a culture of prevention, mitigation, preparedness to put in place in a prompt and efficient response during disaster. If you look into that, the entire process, center stage, the community provide momentum and sustenance through the collective efforts of all the government agency and non-governmental organization. So the basic, like for example, the basic aim of the national NPDM 2009 is it's a promoting a culture of prevention, preparedness, and resilience at all levels through knowledge, innovation, and education, encouraging mitigation measures, mainstreaming disaster management into development planning, establishing institutional and technological framework, and ensuring effective mechanism for identification and assessment and monitoring of disaster risk, development of contemporary forecasting and early warning system, ensuring effective response and relief, undertaking a reconstruction as an opportunity to build disaster resilient sectors, and promoting a culture of promoting a protective and proactive partnership with the media for disaster management. So these are the basic objective of National Policy on Disaster Management 2009. After that, after 7 years, there was a national, we have came out the another plan that is called National Disaster Management Plan 2006. The Prime Minister of India released the National Disaster Management Plan as a first ever national plan prepared in the country. Okay, this plan covers all the aspects of prevention, response, and recovery. It provides the horizontal and vertical integration among all agencies and the departments. So the aim of the plan is that to make India more disaster resilient only. and it is also designed to maximize the ability of the country to cope up with the disaster at all level, like integrating disaster risk reduction into development by increasing the measure preparedness to respond to all kind of disaster. And these are the basic aim of about the National Disaster Management Plan 2016. After that also we have a lot of agencies are there, like a National Disaster Response Force, State Disaster Response Force, and we have a policy informants also, Crisis Management Committee, Crisis Village level institution also. There are various institutions setup has been established in throughout the throughout level. So towards the end, so far we have discussed about the Disaster Management Act and various institution and their role also. In the future session, we'll discuss about the various aspects of disaster management. Thank you a lot.